In today's relentless, optimization-obsessed world, seriousness has become the ultimate status symbol. We celebrate the executive who hasn't taken a vacation in 3 years. We admire the parent who turns every playground visit into a networking opportunity. We applaud the professional who responds to emails at 2 a.m., treating exhaustion like an Olympic sport. In this cultural narrative, the model adult is perpetually grinding, constantly improving, and deeply suspicious of anything that doesn't advance the bottom line. Spontaneity gets scheduled. Laughter requires justification. Play is something you did before you understood how the world really works. But beneath this titanium armor of productivity, something catastrophic is happening. Something that doesn't announce itself with dramatic collapse but instead advances through 1,000 tiny erasures. Your nervous system, designed to oscillate between effort and recovery, begins operating in permanent emergency mode. Your relationships, starved of the lightness that created them, calcify into transactional exchanges. Your capacity for joy, not the Instagram version, but the raw, irrational delight that makes being alive worth the trouble, starts dying so quietly you don't notice until it's gone. What we call discipline is often just slow-motion self-destruction. What we celebrate as maturity is frequently just forgetting how to be human. Marcus sits in Dr. Elena Rodriguez's office, his posture immaculate even in crisis. She's the third therapist he's tried, and is already calculating whether this session will justify the hour away from work. When she asks him to describe his symptoms, he recites them like quarterly metrics. Insomnia for 18 months, irritability that's cost him 2 friendships, a persistent sensation that is watching his life through bulletproof glass. He mentions the tremor in his left hand during presentations. What he doesn't mention, because it sounds absurd, is that he can't remember what genuine laughter feels like in his body. Dr. Rodriguez doesn't reach for her prescription pad. Instead, she asks a question that makes Marcus physically uncomfortable. When was the last time you played? Not exercised with a heart rate monitor. Not bonded with his daughter through educational activities. Actually played, done something purposeless, spontaneous, ridiculous. Marcus's mind goes blank. The silence extends. Eventually, he offers, "I golf sometimes," and immediately recognizes how pathetic it sounds. Those golf games are client meetings with scorecards. What she explains next reframes everything Marcus thought he understood about himself. Play isn't recreational, she tells him. It's regulatory. The human nervous system requires it the way lungs require oxygen. When Dr. Stuart Brown studied the neurobiology of play, he discovered that without it, the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive control center, becomes rigid and inflexible. Decision-making deteriorates. Creativity flatlines. The stress hormone cortisol, meant to spike during actual emergencies, remains chronically elevated, essentially poisoning the body from within. The nervous system loses its resilience, its ability to return to baseline after stress. What Marcus experiences as discipline is actually his biology screaming that it's starving. She describes Brown's research on play-deprived animals. Rats who never played showed profound aggression and couldn't interpret social cues. Primates became withdrawn, unable to form bonds. Even in extreme isolation experiments, humans spontaneously created play, making up games, singing to themselves, finding ways to inject purposelessness into their captivity because the alternative was psychological disintegration. Play isn't what we do when survival needs are met, it's how we maintain the capacity to survive at all. Marcus thinks of his symptoms, the insomnia that no sleep hygiene can fix, the irritability that erupts at minor inconveniences, the emotional numbness that's made him a stranger to his own wife. These aren't character flaws requiring more discipline. They are biological distress signals. His body has been trying to tell him something he's spent 2 decades refusing to hear. He's not broken or weak or insufficiently motivated. He's starving. And you can't productivity hack your way out of starvation. You have to eat. Dr. Rodriguez leans forward. Marcus, you've been operating on the neurological equivalent of 3 hours of sleep per night for years. Not literally, but in terms of play deprivation. Your system is shutting down non-essential functions to conserve energy. Joy isn't a luxury your biology can afford anymore. It's in survival mode. She pauses. The question isn't whether you have time to play. It's whether you can afford not to. For the first time in 7 years, Marcus feels something crack open inside his chest, not relief exactly, but recognition. The sensation of finally having a name for the thing that's been killing him. The recognition becomes inescapable once Marcus knows what to look for. He notices his shoulders first. They've been locked somewhere near his ears for so long that relaxation feels like falling. He catches himself at his daughter's school assembly, watching her sing in the chorus, and realizes with horror that his internal narration is task completed rather than memory created. The performance itself barely registers. What registers is that he showed up, fulfilled the parental obligation, can now move on to the next item on his list. When did witnessing his child's joy become administrative work? His marriage, he sees now, has been dying in slow motion through 1,000 efficient conversations. He and Sarah used to dance in the kitchen while cooking, used to make up absurd voices for the dog, used to collapse into helpless laughter over inside jokes that made no sense to anyone else. Now their exchanges sound like project management meetings. Can you pick up Emma Thursday? Did you pay the water bill? We need to discuss the kitchen renovation budget. They sleep in the same bed and coordinate logistics like business partners who've forgotten why they went into business together. Marcus tries to remember the last time they were silly together and comes up empty. The marriage didn't end in a dramatic explosion. It suffocated under the weight of 10,000 serious conversations about mortgage rates and never once dancing in the kitchen. Then there's the anhedonia, a word Dr. Rodriguez used that Marcus had to look up. The clinical inability to experience pleasure even from things that used to bring joy. He'd thought he just wasn't interested in music anymore, that he'd outgrown hobbies, that his refined taste explained why nothing seemed appealing. But it's simpler and more terrifying than that. His capacity to feel pleasure has atrophied from disuse. When he tries to watch a movie, his mind immediately wanders to work problems. When he attempts to read fiction, he feels guilty for not reading something useful. Food tastes like fuel. Sex feels like another item to check off. His emotional range has narrowed to 3 settings: stressed, accomplished, or numb. What makes it worse is realizing how widespread this is. His colleague Derek brags about not taking a sick day in 5 years, wearing his compromised immune system like a Purple Heart. Marcus's college friend turned every hobby into a side hustle. The photography became a wedding business, the woodworking became an Etsy shop, the joy became a tax write-off. His neighbor can't watch television without simultaneously folding laundry, meal prepping, or returning emails, as if the act of simply sitting constitutes moral failure. They're all performing the same theatrical seriousness, mistaking their symptoms for virtues. Dr. Rodriguez had a term for what happens to relationships under these conditions: relational brittleness. When people stop playing together, she explained, relationships lose their flexibility. They become rigid, transactional, fragile. Play is the social lubricant that allows people to navigate conflict, maintain intimacy, and remember why they chose each other in the first place. Without it, every interaction becomes a negotiation. Every conversation serves a purpose. The relationship stops being a living thing and becomes a series of obligations held together by shared expenses and coordinated calendars. Marcus thinks about his marriage and realizes there was no singular betrayal, no dramatic failure. It died from 1,000 practical discussions about tile choices and never once being ridiculous together. Sarah didn't leave because he did something terrible. She left because she couldn't remember the last time she'd seen him genuinely laugh, and she was tired of living with a well-organized ghost. The damage isn't visible in one moment. It's the accumulated erosion of 1,000 serious days that forgot to include joy. Marcus didn't choose to become this way. He was constructed, piece by systems that pathologized joy and rewarded depletion. The excavation of how it happened begins in Mrs. Patterson's 5th grade classroom, where 10-year-old Marcus sat staring out the window, watching clouds rearrange themselves into dragons. She snapped her fingers in front of his face. "Marcus, you're too old for this daydreaming nonsense. Middle school doesn't have recess. Time to grow up." He remembers the shame that followed, the way he taught himself to redirect his gaze from windows to whiteboards, mistaking the death of imagination for the birth of responsibility. The training continued through every institution he encountered. High school guidance counselors who translated "what do you love" into "what's marketable." College that framed education as career preparation rather than intellectual exploration. His first corporate job, where his manager pulled him aside after 3 months and said with genuine admiration, "Marcus, I appreciate that you're not one of those people who waste time on work-life balance. You understand what it takes." He felt proud then. He'd been recognized for his seriousness, his willingness to sacrifice. What he didn't realize was that he was being praised for slowly killing himself in ways that benefited someone else's profit margin. The corporate culture made the rules explicit: respond to emails within an hour regardless of the time. Never leave before your manager. Vacation days are technically allowed but subtly discouraged. The people who advance are the ones who perform exhaustion theatrically, who treat weekends as offensive suggestions, who've internalized the idea that being unavailable equals being uncommitted. Marcus learned quickly. He answered midnight emails. He scheduled breakfast meetings. He turned every lunch into a networking opportunity. By the time he realized what he traded, there was nothing left to trade back. But the most insidious conditioning came from his pocket. Marcus scrolls through his phone now and sees how the algorithm has slowly eliminated every moment of potential boredom from his life. Waiting for coffee? Scroll through news. Commuting? Podcast at double speed. Standing in line? Email triage. His phone has systematically filled every pause, every gap, every moment of potential stillness with productive consumption. Dr. Brown calls these pauses play's fertile ground, the unstructured moments where curiosity and imagination naturally emerge. Boredom isn't the absence of stimulation, it's the restless, creative state that precedes playful exploration. Marcus tries to remember the last time he experienced genuine boredom and realizes he can't. Not the frustrated, nothing-to-do feeling, but that particular restlessness that makes you pick up a guitar just to see what sounds emerge, or start doodling on a napkin, or wonder what would happen if you took a different street home. Every potentially fertile moment has been occupied by algorithmic content designed to hold his attention but never satisfy it. His feed has become an anxiety-inducing comparison engine where everyone is more successful, more attractive, more fulfilled, and definitely more productive than him. The brief dopamine hits keep him scrolling, but they never create the conditions for actual play. The system didn't just discourage playfulness, it systematically eliminated the environmental conditions that allow play to emerge organically. It replaced spontaneity with scheduled optimization. It converted the fertile silence of potential into the frantic noise of constant consumption. Marcus wasn't weak or undisciplined. He was colonized by structures that profit from his depletion and call it ambition. Understanding this doesn't immediately fix anything, but it does something crucial. It transforms his self-loathing into rage at the right target. Dr. Rodriguez writes 4 words on her whiteboard: voluntary, purposeless, pleasurable, timeless. These are the characteristics of authentic play, she explains. Not exercise. Not hobbies that improve you. Not activities that look good on Instagram. Actual play. Marcus stares at the words and feels something close to vertigo. By this definition, he hasn't played in nearly 2 decades. She asks him to list his leisure activities, and Marcus watches each one collapse under examination. Golf? Networking disguised as recreation, complete with client relationships and business discussions. Reading? exclusively leadership books and industry publications that advance his career. His carefully curated Spotify playlists, optimized for focus and productivity. Even his family vacations are meticulously planned efficiency operations, research destinations, scheduled activities, photo opportunities for the holiday card. Nothing is done just because. Everything justifies its existence through utility. The radical nature of purposeless activity doesn't fully register until Marcus attempts it. Dr. Rodriguez assigns homework, do something with zero external benefit. He chooses painting, something he hasn't touched since childhood. He buys cheap supplies and spreads them across his kitchen table on a Saturday morning, then immediately freezes. What should he paint? What's the goal? His productivity-trained brain demands an objective, a measurable outcome, some way to determine if he's succeeding. When none arrives, the discomfort is physical. He's wasting time. He should be answering emails, planning next week, doing something that matters. But he stays. He moves a brush through blue paint and drags it across canvas without any intention except to see what happens. The color pleases him for no reason he can articulate. He adds yellow, then red. The result is objectively terrible. A child could do better, but something strange occurs. 20 minutes pass like 20 seconds. His jaw unclenches. His thoughts stop their relentless productivity calculations. For a brief window, he exists without justification. It's terrifying and oddly nourishing, like remembering how to breathe after years of holding his breath. The experiments continue. He plays catch with Emma in the backyard, and when she drops the ball, he resists the urge to offer coaching. They're not practicing. They're not building her athletic skills. They're just throwing a ball because throwing a ball is inherently satisfying. When she starts making up elaborate stories about the ball being a dragon egg, he joins in instead of redirecting her to the task. They play for 40 minutes. He forgets his phone exists. He takes a cooking class advertised as chaotic and fun, the opposite of skill development. The instructor encourages messiness, mistakes, experimentation without recipes. Marcus burns garlic over salt soup and somehow creates something inedible but hilarious. The other participants are laughing, swearing, covered in flour. Nobody is optimizing. Nobody is building a personal brand. They're making a joyful mess with strangers for no reason except that it feels good. His productivity brain screams the entire time that this is pointless. But his body, his actual nervous system, feels different. Lighter. More alive. The revelation arrives slowly. Play isn't about the activity itself. Building models, making music, doing improved, throwing a ball, these are just vehicles. What matters is the internal state of purposeless engagement, the willingness to do something that serves no external master. In a culture that demands everything justify its existence through productivity, utility, or self-improvement, doing something just because is a revolutionary act. It's reclaiming your humanity from systems that want to convert every moment into profit. Marcus realizes he's not learning to play. He's learning to exist without permission. Marcus started with what Dr. Brown called play history excavation, which sounded intimidating until he realized it just meant remembering what used to make him happy. He bought a plain notebook, not the leather-bound kind he used for work, just a spiral-bound thing from the drugstore, and started writing. The memories came slowly at first, then faster. Building block cities that sprawled across his bedroom floor, each building with an elaborate backstory. The voices he'd create for imaginary mayors and shopkeepers, complete with accents he'd stolen from cartoons. He'd lose entire Saturday afternoons to those cities, emerging only when his mother called him for dinner 3 times. 23 years since he'd built anything without a business case. The no-purpose hour started badly. His first Sunday, Marcus sat on the living room floor surrounded by couch cushions and blankets, trying to build a fort while his brain screamed that he had emails to answer. He lasted 12 minutes before guilt drove him back to his laptop. The second week wasn't much better. But by week 4, something shifted. He was learning to juggle terribly, dropping balls constantly, when he realized he was laughing. Not polite meeting laughter or obligatory dad joke chuckles, but actual, stomach-tight laughing at his own incompetence. Week 8, he took a walk with no destination and followed a cat for 3 blocks just to see where it was going. Nowhere interesting, as it turned out, but he didn't care. The daily rebellions were easier. Taking the long way to work past the park instead of the highway. Ordering the most ridiculous-sounding sandwich on the menu just to see what sriracha honey bacon with candied jalapenos actually tasted like. Texting his wife random callbacks to their inside jokes during boring conference calls. Walking to the coffee maker like he was sneaking through a laser security system, complete with dramatic rolls and freeze poses when anyone looked his direction. His co-workers thought he'd lost it. Maybe he had. Maybe that was fine. The hardest part was the voice. The one that said grown men don't build forts, successful people don't waste time, serious professionals don't act silly. Marcus practiced talking back to it, not with arguments but with questions. Interesting that I feel guilty about enjoying myself. Why is that? The voice had plenty of answers, but under examination, they all sounded like someone else talking. Old bosses, productivity podcasts, the mythology of corporate success that promised fulfillment through sacrifice. 6 months in, Marcus presented a major distribution strategy to the executive team. But this time, he'd added humor to the data points. Used bright, unexpected visuals instead of the standard corporate blue. Structured the presentation with interactive elements where people actually moved around and discussed scenarios. It felt risky until he saw them leaning forward, engaged, occasionally laughing. Afterward, the CEO caught him in the hallway. That was the most engaging presentation we've had in years. I actually remember what you proposed. Walking to his car that evening, Marcus caught his reflection in the building's glass facade. He paused, studying the man looking back. Not the grim soldier from 6 months ago, armor polished and expression locked. Not the carefree 23-year-old either, unburdened by mortgages and meaning. Someone new, an adult who understood that life was serious enough without making it worse. Someone who'd learned that the opposite of play isn't work, it's depression. Someone who discovered that the most serious things in life actually require play to stay alive. He smiled at his reflection, then did a completely unnecessary spin on his way to the parking lot, just because he could. If this resonated with you, you're probably not here by accident. Subscribe. This channel is for people choosing clarity over chaos.